The Varnach Empire feared little. For more than 2 centuries, they carved through galaxies like wildfire on dry grass. World after world fell. Civilizations broke apart, and resistance shattered like brittle stone beneath their advance. There, warships were colossal, floating citadels built for conquest. Their warriors, gene-forged, towered twice the height of humans and carried no concept of mercy in their guttural tongue. Earth was unknown to them until it wasn't. Humanity had only just begun reaching beyond its cradle. A handful of colonies scattered on Mars, Europa, a lonely mining post near Proxima Centauri. We posed no danger. To them, we were insects, playing with fire. But the Varnach followed doctrine: eliminate before infestation. That was their creed. They didn't dispatch an armada, only a single battlecruiser, the Varnach, with a light escort wing. More than enough to erase an upstart species and mark it as done. Another simple purge, or so they thought. And then came the Merciless. Not Earth's largest ship, not its most advanced. Hell, even then the Merciless ran on patched-up code and an engine core older than half its crew. But it carried something the Varnach had no measure for. Captain Elijah Rohr. Their first meeting came at the edge of the Gliesa system. Varnach warships slipped from warp, hulls black as the abyss and bristling with guns. The Merciless floated alone, assigned to nothing more than patrol duty, just eyes on the border of human space. Rohr didn't flinch. "Tell command we've got company," he said, calm as ever, lighting a cigarette in his chair as alarms flared red. "And prep everything. We're holding this line." His bridge crew exchanged wary looks. "Captain, that's a Varnach cruiser." I know what it is," Rohr cut in, voice unshaken. "You see another ship here ready to fight?" "No, sir." "Then it's us." The Merciless launched every drone, armed every torpedo, powered its main gun, a creaking fusion lance unused in 5 years. The crew steeled themselves. Everyone knew it was suicide. Everyone except Rohr. Or maybe he knew and simply didn't care. The Varnach fired first. Blue plasma carved across the void, slamming shields until they screamed. A hull compartment ruptured. In flame. Still, Rohr gave orders like a man playing chess, not gambling with death. "Cut life support on Deck 4, he barked. "I want those guns online." Every strike counted. The Merciless darted, clawed, and bit back like a feral beast. Smaller escorts fell first, one consumed in fire, another crippled, left drifting cold. Then it was one cruiser against one human ship. Rohr stood tall, eyes fixed on the massive vessel. Looming on screen, "Let's dance, you oversized lizard." The Varnach misjudged him. It advanced steady, brutal, expecting fear, collapse, surrender. Rohr gave none of that. He gave them hell. The Merciless surged forward in a maneuver no sane. Captain would risk sliding beneath its belly and unloading 2 torpedoes point blank. The blast ripped open its lower shields, and for the first time in decades, a Varnach cruiser staggered. Rohr grinned through the blood on his brow, sparks raining behind him. "Welcome to humanity, bastards." And out there, across the stars, as comms lit up and distress signals flared, one report repeated again and again: "The line is holding." The damage to the Varnach wasn't fatal, but it was unforgivable. The Varnach didn't just conquer, they erased. Whole systems vanished under their claws. Yet here, orbiting a nameless yellow star, one battered human ship had pierced their armor. Not by might, but by sheer defiance. The Merciless didn't retreat. It couldn't. Engines screamed on the brink of meltdown. A stabilizer hung in ruin. 2 decks were dead. The medbay overflowed with blood and groans, the lights flickering like the ship itself struggled to breathe. But Captain Rohr stood unshaken in the center of it all. His first officer, Lieutenant Vega, burned scored across. Her cheek and her arm strapped in a sling still met his eyes sharp as steel. "Captain, we need to fall back to Titan. We've got nothing left." "And if we run," Rohr answered, scanning failing systems, They'll burn every colony from here to Earth. They need time. We'll buy it. How? Prayers and duct tape. A ghost of a grin touched his lips. Prayers optional. Duct tape's keeping engineering alive, though. The crew barked out a cracked laugh. Bitter, but real. It was something. They weren't just fighters now. They were survivors staring down a monster, and their captain still had fire left. The Varnach came again, this time merciless. Plasma tore across the void with precision strikes. Shields flared white, then vanished. Hulls split on decks 3 and 5. Firestorms consumed cargo holds. 27 lives gone in a blink. Roar didn't flinch. He strode to the tactical map and carved out a new course. They think we're dying, he muttered. Let's show them what dying humans can do. The Solace didn't fight with power, it fought with desperation. Roar ordered every warhead prepped for point-blank detonation. The ship itself became a weapon, a drifting minefield of rage. If they close in, he told the gunnery chief, make them choke on us. When the Varnach advanced for the kill, expecting a routine execution, it was met by hell. Drones flung themselves into its flanks, shrapnel detonated like shotguns, molten wreckage seared its armor. It wasn't enough to kill the cruiser, but it was enough to stall it. And in war, a few stolen minutes can change the fate of worlds. Because while Roar held the line, the rest of humanity was waking up. Earth's High Command received Roar's final broadcast, half corrupted by static, but clear enough to ignite a storm. We are not backing down. If this is our grave, we'll bury them with us. Those words slammed into Earth like thunder. Civilian networks spread the message in minutes. Colonists on Mars, miners on Europa, freighter crews, ex-Marines. All of them watched the lone ship defy the impossible. Roar wasn't just stalling. He was setting a fire inside a species. On the Solace's bridge, sweat streaked his ash-smeared face as he glanced through the fractured viewport. The Varnach bore fresh scars, hull scorched and its undercarriage flickering with damage. It wasn't used to being challenged. They'll call reinforcements soon, Vega warned. So will we, Roar replied, his voice hoarse. For the first time in history, humanity might actually answer the call. Already, light years away, a half-retired dreadnought named Vanguard was powering up. A Martian Warclin intercepted the signal and was burning and fast. Even a ragged Saturn convoy, armed with black market railguns and unfiltered rage, was on the way. The Varnach had stirred something they didn't understand. Not a fleet, not an army, humanity. The Varnach hesitated. Not from fear, it didn't know the word, but from confusion. Resistance at this stage was irrational. Species in their infancy never fought overwhelming force. They folded. They begged. But the Solace had not only fought back, it had scarred them. Worse, more ships were now flashing on its scans. Disorganized, crude by Varnach standards, yet converging fast. Aboard the Solace, Roar leaned over the console, his voice cracked but steady on the ship-wide comms. All hands listen, we've got friendlies incoming. They heard us. A pause, then cheers broke out, tired, ragged but real. Hope, reborn. Vega squinted at the display. 3 ships just dropped from warp, the Vanguard, the Osiris, and gods, that's the Iron Widow, a Martian flagship. Despite blood running down his side, Roar grinned. Tell them the line still holds. Outside, the newcomers formed around the battered Solace. The Vanguard, massive and ancient, broadcast a single, unflinching message across every frequency. To whoever's knocking Earth's not home, try hell. The Varnach's AI recalculated. Humanity's status changed from developing species to disruptive force. Escalation followed. From hyperspace, 2 destroyer-class reinforcements tore through the dark, jagged beasts glowing with red cores. The void itself seemed to shudder at their arrival. On the Solace, alarms howled. Again, no one flinched this time. Roar only glanced at the viewport, so they brought friends. Looks like a party, Vega muttered, strapping in. The Iron Widow struck first, Martian fury in motion. It hurled itself at a destroyer, its arsenal illegal in every civilized system. Martians were known for scars and vengeance, and they hadn't forgotten the Varnach burning of Ceres' no survivors. Rage was their fuel. The void became the storm. Laser fire carved the dark. Wreckage burst apart in silence. The Osiris strafed wide, slamming the second destroyer with railgun fire. The Vanguard hurled fusion torpedoes that chewed through armor. And still, at the center of it all, refusing to yield, stood the Solace, half dead, bleeding sparks, but unbroken. "They're on us again," Vega shouted. "That cruiser's ignoring the others." "Because we humiliated it," Roar growled. "Good, let's make it worse." He keyed to engineering. "Voss, talk to me." Through static came Voss's voice, hoarse and bitterly alive. "Sir, it's holding. Barely." The ancient fusion lance hummed, its glow building like a heartbeat. Roar fixed his eyes on the Runvac's looming form. "Line it up, I want its eye." The Solace lurched into position, weaving through plasma fire on failing thrusters. The crew felt it too, the shift. They weren't prey anymore. They were the spark, and more ships kept arriving. Armed freighters, militia craft, even an asteroid tug wired with explosives. Not disciplined, not ordered, but relentless, furious, human. In a galaxy used to scripts of submission, this made no sense. That was the danger. Humanity didn't read from the same book. The Solace locked aim. Roar steadied himself, one hand. Trembling on the control. Fire. The fusion lance roared, a beam of pure devastation tearing across the void, dry. Suicide. But Roar didn't care. He sent a fleet-wide transmission. "All ships, stand clear off Solace. We're making one final pass. Admiral, if we don't make it out, finish the job." For a brief moment, silence reigned. Then the Dauntless cut its engines and pulled back, clearing a path. The Solace turned, broken nose pointing directly at the Varnach warcruiser. The stars shimmered behind it, and the fire of vengeance burned ahead. Inside the Runvac, panic stirred, mechanical, calculated. Yet real. The humans weren't retreating. The Logicare scrambled to make sense of it. Species under threat did not accelerate toward death, but humans did. The Solace went full burn, every engine screaming. Hull plating tore loose from the pressure. Fire erupted on two decks. The bridge lights died. Systems went dark. Still, the ship moved forward. The Varnach cruiser tried to turn away. Too slow. Roar stood at the manual detonation panel, key in hand. Vega strapped hers to the railing, her voice steady but wet with tears. "See you on the other side, Captain." He looked at her, then at the panel, and inserted the key dot, and then just as his hand hovered over the trigger, "This is the Erebus. Hold your fire. The Runvac is venting core. It's done." "Roar, you broke its spine." He froze. On the screen, the massive cruiser shuddered. Its central engine flared, then collapsed inward. Blue light surged down its body, a cascade of uncontrolled overloads. The Runvac didn't explode. It crumbled piece by piece, like a dying star. It broke apart into silence and dust. No detonation needed. The Solace stopped short, less than 500 from the remains, barely alive. The crew sat in silence, then cheers, sobs, screams of exhausted grief. Captain Roar stepped away from the panel, legs weak, breathing shallow. "Cancel the fireworks," he muttered. "I'm getting too old for martyrdom." And just like that, humanity had done the impossible. They hadn't just survived. They had held the linear and broken the invincible. The debris from the Runvac floated across. The void like drifting bones of a fallen god. For the first time in living memory, the Varnach cruiser had been destroyed. Not by a superior force, not by advancetic, but by what the Varnach once called a primitive species, and worse, by a single ship that should have never survived the first salvo. The Solace was towed back to the outer orbit of Titan B, the pillar of autumn, its hull sparking, engines silent, but its name burned into history. Every news feed across the colonies replayed the footage. The last charge, the crumbling Grunvac, the battered ship refusing to die. Captain Elijah Rohr, broken ribs Endel, walked down the ramp as the docking bay hissed open, the gravity plating humming beneath his feet. His uniform was scorched, eyes red, knuckles bloodied, but he stood tall. He was greeted not by fanfare, not by generals, but by silence and a sea of eyes. Engineers, soldiers, medics, civilians who had risked everything to get the message out. Survivors. Believers. The silence held for a beat, then applause. Not polite, not rehearsed. It exploded through the hangar like a war cry, echoing off every wall, building in waves until even Rohr, tired, scarred, had to close his eyes and take a shaky breath. But not everyone was cheering. In the command tower above the dock, General Elena Karinas watched the scene with folded arms and a scowl. She hadn't wanted this. Heroes made people harder to control. She turned to her aide. Has EarthGov authorized an official commendation? They're debating it, the aide said carefully. The Solace acted without formal clearance. They're discussing protocol breaches, collateral loss, unauthorized combat engagement. Corvinus snapped. They want to downplay him before he becomes a symbol. They can't manage, and he was a symbol now. Across Mars, graffiti read, "Hold the line." On Earth, children played games pretending to be Captain Rohr of the Solace. On Europa, a woman kissed a photo of her dead brother who had died aboard the Solace and whispered, "You stopped them." But far beyond the outer colonies, in the deep, cold stretches of space, the Varnach were not mourning. They were watching. The shattered Grunvac had broadcast its last moments to the Empire before it died. The footage, corrupted and glitchy, still showed what mattered. A human ship, defiant to Fiend, refusing to move. The Varnach's high executive watched the loop over and over, his claws twitching in irritation. A dozen warlords debated in their native tongue, sibilant, guttural, hateful. They did not mourn the loss of a ship. They mourned the loss of certainty. The humans had disrupted the order of things. This was not a resistance, this was infection. And the Varnach only had an answer to infection. Extermination. Send the writ of retaliation. The high executive hissed. The humans are no longer to be studied or monitored. They are to be erased, all of them. Back in Sol System, Earth's political council scrambled. Half the senators wanted to negotiate, believing that diplomacy could still stop a war. The other half demanded rearmament. And then there was the new faction. Young militant, inspired by Rohr, colonists, engineers, smugglers, ex-soldiers, and students. They didn't wait for governments. They organized online, calling themselves the Soulless Legion. They pledged to defend humanity by any means, with or without permission. They wore patches stitched with one phrase, "We hold the line." Rohr didn't want fame, he didn't want politics. But in the aftermath, as medals were tossed at him like apologies, he realized something. This wasn't the end. The Varnach would return, and next time they wouldn't underestimate humanity. 3 weeks passed since the battle. The Solace, barely. A ship in a more like a floating coffin wrapped in legend, rested in dry dock above Mars. Engineers swarmed over it like ants on a dying tree, debating whether to scrap or preserve it. Politicians wanted it as a museum piece. Soldiers wanted it reforged into something deadlier. But the people wanted it remembered exactly how it was, wounded but undefeated. Captain Elijah Rohr sat alone in a hospital wing at Armstrong Base, half his ribs still wrapped, one lung recovering from vacuum exposure. The room was quiet, clean, lifeless, the kind of sterile peace that made him itch. A soft knock broke the silence. He didn't turn. Doors open. Lieutenant Vega stepped in, her arm still in a sling, a slight limp in her walk. She looked tired, but sharper, somehow hardened. They hadn't spoken much since the battle. Everyone had been scattered across fleets, councils, briefings. The system was still spinning. "You're alive," she said, walking in and dropping a bag of lukewarm Martian coffee on the side table. Regrettably, he grunted. "They fixed me up so I could sit in more goddamn interviews," she chuckled. "The Admiral's love. You now, you're a propaganda machine. Yeah, let them put them in aship held together with chewing gum and spite next time." He sipped the bitter drink and leaned back, groaning as his ribs protested. "Earth-gov splitting," she said after a moment. "Half want to prepare for war. Half think we should beg for peace." "They won't get peace," Roar said quietly. "Not after what we did. Not after the runback. They're calling it a fluke." He turned, meeting her eyes. "We humiliated them, Vega, and humiliation for an empire like that. It's like blood in the water. They have to answer it. They'll come back." She nodded. "I think they already have." She tossed a data chip onto his tray. "Intercepted signals. Fringe colonies have gone dark. No word from Talon's reach. A freighter limped into Europa orbit, with half its hull gone. Pilot swears it was a Varnach scout wing. Small fast, testing the outer lines." Roar clenched his jaw. Recon before the hammer. "And EarthGov's too busy debating budget, logistics, and treaty. Wording. They're not ready. We're not ready." They sat in silence for a moment. The hum of the med equipment, the only sound between them. Then Vega leaned in. "I want to rebuild the Solace." Roar blinked. "Rebuild. Not restore. Not preserve. Rebuild. Make her stronger, smarter, faster, but keep the soul of her. Keep what made her ours." He looked at her for a long time. "They won't authorize that," she smirked. "Already started. Thesaurus Legion has engineers volunteering from all over, even Martian techsmiths. Half of them used to be criminals. Other half probably still are." He couldn't help but smile. "Damperets are finally good for something." Vega leaned forward. "More serious, no. We can't wait for EarthGov to decide who we are. We already showed the galaxy who we are. Now we need to be ready to show them again. Bigger." Roar nodded slowly. "You get Theship, I'll get the crew." Far across space in a cold void, known only as Sector 95, Tau, the Varnach War Council convened in darkness. Their language was jagged, aggressive, filled with clicks and growls that sounded like metal grinding against bone. But in that massive torch-lit chamber, no voices were raised. Only the hiss of strategy. A new campaign had been approved. Not for conquest, for annihilation. The Sol system was to be erased, not subjugated, not studied, not spared. An overseer drone skittered forward, projecting a distorted image of the cellulus, damaged, glowing, firing into the runvuk before it collapsed. One of the Varnach warlords snapped his claw against the stone floor hard enough to crack it. "They remember the name," the translatorbit whispered into Terran Standard. "We will burn it from their Marie." 30 Varnach destroyers were activated. 5 command dreadnoughts, 1 world killer-class siege engine. They were not coming to fight Earth. They were coming to cleanse it. On Earth, Roar stood in front of a growing crowd on the launch platform at Luna Prime. He hated speeches, hated politics. But this one mattered. Behind him, the cellulus hung suspended in scaffold beams, still missing entire plates of armor. But beneath the broken frame, engines had been replaced. Warheads, retired freighters converted into missile barges. Even a few black market stealth rigs. Their crews grinning like wolves in the dark. Thesaurus Legion was no longer a symbol. It was an army. Roar rose slowly, his voice steady on the open. "Calm. Make no mistake, they're not just coming for our worlds. They're coming to erase our existence. They want us forgotten." He looked at every screen, 8 for crew. They call this their galaxy. They think we're just an inconvenience. Well, today we remind them who the real problem is. A pause. Today we hold Thelene again. He sat and space exploded. The first wave hit like a tsunami of light and metal. Varnach destroyers surged forward, firing plasma lances and quantum disruptors, tearing into the human formation with ruthless precision. The Iron Widow took the brunt, its Martian hull groaning but unbroken. The Osiris launched counterstrike missiles, saturating the dark with clouds of flame. For every human ship that fell, another surged into its place. They didn't scatter. They didn't retreat. They pushed. The Solus Requiem weighs very where. Roar drove it like a blade between ribs, weaving through enemy fire, targeting weak points, smashing apart 2 destroyers in the first 5 minutes of battle. Her fusion lance now fired in precise bursts, each one tearing through enemy armor like paper. But then came the Ashvakel. A single pulse from its central cannon sliced through space and vaporized 3 ships instantly. The explosion lit the void, sending shock waves across the battlefield. Vega screamed overcoms. Ashvakel is charging for another shot. Roar didn't blink. Close the distance. Get under it. That monster was built to breed planets, not people. The Solus Requiem burned hard toward the Ashvakel, dodging debris and weaving between enemy lines. Other ships followed, Vanguard laying down cover fire, Erebus launching drones in all directions, swarm tactics in full effect. But it wasn't enough. One by one, the dreadnoughts began to move. Not fast but deliberately, targeting Earth's orbital. Station's humanity shirt. Roar saw it. He felt it in his bones. They're going for the kill. He up and fleet-wide comes. All hands, this is it. Every ounce of power, every shot you've got. We take the Ashvakel down or Earth burns. The approach was hell. 3 more human ships exploded before they got within firing range. The Solus shook under direct impact, flames licking the control deck. Vega was bleeding from the temple, and Rushan's trembled from a fractured wrist. But they kept going. The final volley was a suicide run. Target its core, Roar shouted. And prep the charge. Vega looked at them. You're not doing this again. We don't detonate us. We plant it, he said through gritted teeth. We're not dying heroes. We're survivors with a vendetta. With the Ashvakel's defenses torn open by the combined fire of the Pillar of Autumn and Dauntless, the Solus Requiem plunged into its belly like a dagger. Roar and Vega personally led a boarding team onto the enemy dreadnought, fighting through Varnach drones and breathing in recycled firest. Made it to the core chamber. Thieving pulsed like a dark heart. Roar stared at it, whispered, time to return the favor. They planted the fusion bomb, set it to a delayed trigger, and sprinted like hell. Back aboard the Requiem, the engines were barely holding. The crew was running on willpower and adrenaline. The human fleet had fallen back, beaten and broken. But watching. And then light. The Ashvakel detonated from the inside. A slow, swelling bloom of white that lit stars like a second sun. Varn systems collapsed instantly. Their dreadnoughts blinked offline. Their formation fell apart. They hadn't just lost a ship. They lost their god, and they ran. For the first time in history, the Varnach retreated. Humanity, scarred, bloodied, half ruined, stood alone in the ashes of a would-be grave. And once again, across every channel, every world, every tongue, the message went out. The line held. Months later, at a quiet memorial on Earth, they unveiled a statue, not of a hero, but of a ship. The Solus carved in burnished stone, aimed forever skyward beneath it. The words etched in metal, they came for our extinction. We gave them resistance, and when all seemed lost, we held Thelene. Roar stood nearby, older now, still healing. But when children ran past and saluted the statue, he allowed himself one small smile, because he knew the galaxy would never forget Earth again.